All right. Well, today I wanted to discuss the voice halo effect and the thick accent Failo effect. I've always thought having a deep voice helps tremendously in attracting women and also in your career, but also in making friends. But recently I was using Hinge this past week and I was sending a voice prompt to a girl. I like to do that sometimes. It can be fun, and I was just bored. And she sent back that she loved my voice, as you can see here. This definitely confirmed what I've been thinking for years. I think when you have a deeper voice, women just find it much more attractive. As a deeper voice, it signals higher testosterone to them, and it just sounds more masculine. Obviously, your voice isn't as important as your physical looks, like your height, your face, your physique, your hair. It's definitely better to be overall like a tall, good-looking guy with a high-pitched voice than say like an average height, below average-looking guy. But I would say once a girl finds you physically attractive, the next biggest factor in the short term, at least, is going to be your voice. Now, your voice won't make a difference if the girl doesn't find you physically attractive, but I think as long as a girl finds you at least somewhat attractive, having a deeper voice can help to make her much more attracted to you, but you still need to meet that initial looks threshold. I've also noticed that it's just easier to listen to a deeper voice when you're watching a video or listening to a podcast. It just makes the viewing and listening experience much better. I think also maybe having a raspy voice can also help in attracting women from my experience. When you're talking to a girl, they're hearing a soothing voice that just sounds more masculine when it's deeper, and they're just naturally more attracted to that. I just think it's hardwired in their overall biology. I think it's also easier to just have a conversation with someone who has a deeper voice. I think when someone has a very nasally voice, someone who sounds like this, it's very hard to concentrate on what they're saying because their voice sounds very harsh and almost annoying. It's definitely on a subconscious level too. Like when you're listening to a very nasally voice, you immediately kind of get annoyed. And subconsciously, you don't even really want to continue to talk to them. On a conscious level, you'll hear them, you'll hear their voice, you'll hear them out, you'll try to understand what they're saying. But that's just something I've noticed. Also, when someone has a rougher accent, some people I've noticed just have less patience overall. I remember a few years back, there was this older Asian guy. He was probably in his 50s. He was asking a question to a girl at the front counter of my gym. And this girl was probably early 20s, if I could guess. She kind of looked like Bad Baby, actually. Not as attractive as Bad Baby, but she had the same hair, the same fashion, kind of the same vibe, if you can kind of catch my drift. Bad Baby is basically the Catch Me Outside girl from Dr. Phil from years and years back. And this guy was asking her about the weekly passes. And I remember her saying, What? I can't understand you. And I remember him trying to explain it again. And she just got really impatient and said, Hold on. And then she called the manager on, I guess, I don't know what it was, the phone or the walkie-talkie or whatever she had, but she called over the manager. And I remember the guy was just kind of standing there. I kind of wanted to butt in and just tell her hey, he's asking about the weekly passes, but she was being super rude to this guy. She didn't even, when he started to talk again, she didn't even look at him. She didn't even really let him talk again until the manager arrived. She was just looking down at her desk while this guy was trying to explain it. And then the manager came and obviously helped him out, but this guy wasn't even bad looking. He was just probably in his mid 50s, just your average run of the mill, older Asian guy. But it was solely for his case that his accent was just much harder to understand. And she just kind of didn't even give him basic respect. I mean, most people would give that guy basic respect, but I don't know. I really feel for people who have really rougher sounding accents because that must be very frustrating, especially if you're in an area that is not used to hearing that accent. Bottom line is people can naturally lose their patience and sometimes even get angry when they can't understand someone who has more of a thicker accent. I think from a career perspective, I also remember getting on a group call at work years ago, and when I started to talk, this older lady said, she's like, "Wow, you've got a great voice." And I was like, she's like, "You should work in radio." And I was like, I kind of laughed it off, but I definitely think this could help you in your career to some extent. And let's just say you're giving a presentation on a product to clients over the phone, and they're listening to your sales pitch as an example. When you have a deeper voice, they're just going to concentrate on what you're saying more. And it can be an easier sale than, say, if you had like a nasally or high pitched voice or like just a rougher sounding accent. And with the deeper voice, you may be invoking feelings during the sales process of like trust and like competency. And this is all happening subconsciously solely because of your deeper voice. You could be saying the exact same words as someone who has a rougher sounding accent. But when you have that deeper voice, it just, in a way, it can convey more competency, I think, on a subconscious level. That's how people respond to it. With a rougher sounding accent, the people you're selling to just may not understand what you're saying. And after the sales presentation, they may just have a ton of questions because they just couldn't make out what you were saying, essentially. And those questions will probably lead to, more questions when you go to explain yourself further. And all those questions just may lead to much more objections about the product. Whereas if you had that deeper voice, they would have understood your whole sales pitch, and this will probably lead to you getting less objections overall. When someone has a deeper voice, more soothing voice, it really does also help you in interview scenarios because the interviews will clearly hear your answers and they probably won't have you explain yourself as much. Whereas someone who has like a thicker accent will probably have to answer a lot more follow-up questions because the interviewers just weren't able to understand everything they were saying clearly. And I think there's got to be some interviewers out there that might get annoyed, and that annoyance about the thicker accent could lead to them judging that person more harshly during the deliberation when they debrief after to decide if they want to hire that person. And they may not even be thinking about the fact that this person has a rougher sounding accent, but subconsciously they just may not want to work with that person. Having a deeper, smooth sounding voice also helps you in making friends. So when you're having a conversation with someone and you can clearly hear and understand what they're saying, you're just more likely to want to engage in that conversation. But also because you can clearly hear everything you're saying, you can kind of jump in at certain points. Maybe they made a certain point and you have an experience where you can relate to them on. It makes it easier when they have like a deeper voice. It's easier to understand them. Whereas if somebody has that thicker accent, you're trying to listen closely to what they're saying, but you're not getting all of the words. And once they're done talking, you may not be able to like fully comprehend exactly what they were saying. So the conversation may die out, naturally from there. And it's got to be frustrating. And going back to the bad baby example, I think there's a good amount of people that if they hear that like thicker accent in a conversation with you, they just like subconsciously, they might get annoyed. They might get more impatient just because they can't clearly understand what they're saying. And that might lead them to want to leave that conversation like prematurely. And then, those two people may have ended up being friends if the guy didn't have a thicker accent, but because he did, that other person wants to leave that conversation. And the best advice I can give for someone who does have like a deeper voice from a dating perspective is, let's just say you're not super attractive, but you're talking to a girl on Hinge or you're talking to a girl over text. Using voice prompts can't hurt you because if you have a deeper voice or you have a smooth sounding voice and she's hearing these voice prompts, it could actually make her more attracted to you as long as you meet her initial looks threshold. It can't really hurt. And then if you're somebody who has more of like a thicker accent, I mean, take this with a grain of salt because I don't really know exactly what that's like, but I would say try to really focus on enunciating your words. That can help. But those are just my best tips. Like I said, take those with a grain of salt. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like, feel free to comment down below, and feel free to subscribe. Until next time, take care.